Okay, so good morning, everybody, and thank you for everybody who's joined, and for the many people I know who watch on playback. So another Friday morning, another great guest on the Places We'll Go show. I'm really thrilled to have Mark Reed on the show this morning. Welcome, Mark. Great to have you on the show.
Good morning. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, Richie. How are you both?
Well, doing well, other than, as Mark alluded to, the slight sweating moment yesterday evening, which is now resolved. So yeah, feeling good.
Very good.
And looking forward to Nudge Stock later as well. So,
yeah, me too.
Should be a good day.
I'm feeling good. I always feel good for the show. It's a lovely thing to be able to do, to talk to some amazing people to find out their insights and what makes them tick. So let me introduce Mark, so you have a bit of context. I'm pretty sure everyone will be fully aware of Mark's history and credentials, but nonetheless, so Mark is CEO of WPP, which is an enormous company. So it's a network of agencies covering all aspects of marketing services. Revenue over 12 billion and over 100,000 employees. So Mark is CEO to 100,000 people. Now, Mark is synonymous with WPP, but actually had a few detours along the way. So he actually worked in strategic consultancy for 4 years with Booz & Co. And also founded and sold an online loyalty business, WebRewards, which I would have guessed a few people didn't know. So definitely not a one-trick pony, but actually has held a number of massive roles at WPP. So he was CEO of WPP Digital for nearly a decade, then CEO of Wunderman, which is within the WPP group, for 4 years. Briefly COO, and then moved into the top job about 3 years ago, just after Sir Martin Sorrell had been at the helm for I think about 33 years. It is a massive job. It's all markets, it's all sectors. You couldn't have a more global perspective. Now, despite this, Mark is softly spoken, calm person. There's definitely no chest beating here, but he does have a steely determination to drive the business, but also to do that in the right way. What I mean by that is Mark is proactive and passionate on well-being and D&I agendas, and I'm sure we'll hear about that. And I suspect somewhat reluctant to be in the spotlight as much as he is. Ultimately, it's a role with high levels of stress. I'm sure you can never please everyone all the time, far from it. But Mark does that with effortless charm. So it's great to have you on the show, Mark, to understand what makes you tick and get your perspective on these very curious times.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Mark. And I'll try to do more chest beating today if I can. I'll channel my inner gorilla for you.
Wonderful. Well, on that note, I'll hand over to Richie to get us started.
That sounds awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing some of that, Mark. Well, look, it's absolutely brilliant to have you on the show this morning. I know our audience have been anticipating the session for quite a while now, so it's just brilliant to have you on. Mark, look, let me kick us off, right? I mean, the year has, more than a year, has been really topsy-turvy, but it feels like in some regions of the world, we are starting to see a glimmer of hope and light, and whatever that new normal would look like in the future. So I'd love to get perhaps your reflections on the last year gone by, and perhaps even just mixed in with a little bit of how you're feeling now.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's been it's now 15 months, almost 16 months, I think. It's been quite a period of time, and I don't think any of us, necessarily would have expected it to go on so long. If we know now what we do now, we would have done. And I don't think we're by any means sort of out of it, certainly not on a global basis. If I talk to my colleagues in India or Brazil or Peru, times are tough around the world. And even here in the UK, it sometimes feels like we take sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. But look, I think it's been a challenging period. But for us as a business, I think we've learned a tremendous amount about what we need to do and where we need to go. But I think for our people, it's been particularly difficult. And I think it's been particularly difficult, as a leader of a large company, and for the people that manage our people to really deal with that, because we just don't know. You sort of don't know what's going on when everyone's working from home. Now, you may actually not know what was going on when everyone was working in the office either, which people sometimes forget. But I think that this period of time, as everyone has said, will change business, society forever. And we don't know how much, but I do know that we're never going back to the way things used to be. which is probably in many cases a good thing, because there has been this sort of period of great self-reflection, hasn't it, for everybody, I think. We've all had quite a lot of time for self-reflection, and I think hopefully that will bring out the best in people.
Yeah, many silver linings, and many people we've talked to through this time have talked to that. In terms of self-reflection, completely connect with that thought. I guess what have your self-reflections been?
Well, I think both the way in which I work, and the way in which I behave. I think I just think about the biggest challenge you realize as a CEO is the sort of internal communications challenge. How do you decide on the vision for your business and then communicate that to the people inside the organization so that they understand and believe what you're trying to do as a company, and really are motivated to achieve that. And that used to be something that we would send emails out, but this has been totally transformational. The ability to communicate like this with people around the world actually has been fantastic for organizations, I think, and encouraged a much more natural style of communication. I remember seeing the video that Arne Sorensen did, the CEO of Marriott, who sadly passed away during COVID. And it's just a very natural video of his reaction to the impact of the pandemic on his business. He posted it on LinkedIn, I think got millions of views. And that was a piece of communication that would never have come out pre-pandemic. Chief executives were expected to be, in a tie, in a suit, reading from the script. And so I think it has encouraged, broken down a lot of the barriers between leaders and people, I hope. So I think that's a good thing. It's certainly encouraged me to be much more natural in, the way I communicate. I like to think I was before, but certainly encouraged that. But then also just the way I work, I don't think I'll ever go back, as many people commented, to traveling the way I used to travel. I'm sure I'll work from different places, sometimes from home, like other people. So, and I think it's sort of changed the importance of family and other priorities in people's lives. It's introduced a little bit more balance. At the same time, it's made some things more challenging because it's kind of become harder to escape from work. So I think we'll figure it out, just as we figured out, the last 15 months. We'll figure it out, and actually it will be good.
Mark, it's interesting. So, we'd love to get a little bit more glimpse into life as a CEO. And you referred to some of those kind of key points, but actually you're in a very unique position that your organization's literally spread probably in most corners of the globe. And the perception, therefore, then is that someone at the helm of that organization is working flat out 24/7, probably in a hyper stressful environment. Love just to kind of equal that and marry that up with the reality. What's some of your thoughts, and how do you?
I think that is the reality. I spent Harvard Business School do a sort of 2-day program for incoming public company CEOs. And they asked them to do a sort of time diary over a 3-month period. And the average large public company CEO, I think they figured out, worked 13 hours a day during the week and 8 hours over the weekend. So these jobs are pretty relentless in terms of time. I don't think that's not the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge, surprise to me, is just the variety of issues that you will deal with, from people issues, in our case to client issues, to legal issues, to suddenly COVID, to people being kidnapped, to IT. Think about the number of ransomware issues people are dealing with. So there's never a dull moment, I would say. And I came home last night thinking I'd have a relaxing evening, and something cropped up that kept me on the phone for an hour and a half. I'm not complaining. It's all part of the job. That sort of constant change is what makes it stimulating, though.
So I'm sure you have some things that you find frustrating, but is it important that you love your job to put that amount of energy and time into it?
Yeah, I think you've got to love it. I mean, look, I'm British, so I'm going to get overboard with the emotions. If I was American, I'd say, it's the most fantastic thing ever. Look, I think WPP is the most amazing company. We have the most amazing people. When I see our work, I do feel incredibly proud of, the work that we do. And so, yeah, I do get, I call it a sort of, a sense of sort of inner satisfaction when we do really well. When things are more challenging, it's tougher. And there's no doubt the last 18 months have been challenging probably for virtually every company in the world, apart from sort of the tech giants, if you like. So, it's nothing would really prepare you for this, I can assure you.
On that note, though, Mark, so you're talking about nothing prepare you. Did you have visions of wanting to step into a role like this? Perhaps reflecting back on your younger self, even back into sort of teen years. I mean, was this sort of the ambition that you had and a very kind of crafty plan, or how did that kind of come about?
I don't know. I probably actually wanted more to be an entrepreneur, to run my own business than necessarily to run a public company. I think there's a feeling in this country that somehow people that run public companies are sort of less worthy, if you like, than entrepreneurs, which I just think is the most bizarre thing. If you would take, the people that in some ways run 100 of our biggest enterprises, you'd want them to be, not over. You'd want. I don't think people should be celebrated, but I think that these are worthwhile jobs to do. That you want good people to do them well, to make the company and the people that work for them succeed. But going back to where you started, no, I mean, I never anticipated being CEO of WPP. I can assure you of that. So I didn't really know. I certainly didn't have any great master plan in terms of how I wanted to develop my career, which is probably, I don't think, a mistake, but probably I should have taken more risks earlier on in my career, which I think actually people can do today. I had a fortunate background. I went to Cambridge. When I left, the career decision amongst my peers, the ones that were sort of innovative, ambitious, was McKinsey or Goldman Sachs, right? Or investment banking or consulting, which is pretty sad if you think about it. And I think the opportunities facing people today are much broader. And actually, I think it's fantastic, the sort of startup culture we have in this country, and that actually people will go and do that. Or indeed the fact that, there are these programs that encourage people to be teachers and other things. So I think we're in a sort of much healthier place. And, maybe if I graduated, 20 years later, I'd have done something different. It probably would have been a bit more fun, really.
Now, I did a very sort of simplistic overview, all sounded beautifully choreographed, of how you've moved to the role you're in now. I'm sure there were some twists and turns, but what do you think are some of the fundamental characteristics in you that have got you to achieve the success that you have?
I don't know. I think I work. I think I work quite hard. So, there's no doubt that Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hour theory is correct. If you spend 10,000 hours doing something, you are, kind of an expert in it. And I've been fortunate. I had, when I first worked at WPP, apart from Martin, obviously, Jeremy Bournemore was down the corridor, and I would spend many hours in his office, many hours in his office, being indulged by him on sort of our industry and what it took to succeed and how to run an agency. And I think I learned, a tremendous amount from him. I went to business school. I came back. I ended up in consulting. That was like the most thankless task I've ever done in my whole life. Really, just hard work and, not very rewarding, I would say. But you do learn a tremendous amount. If you work from 9 a.m. till 10 p.m, 5 days a week, you pick up a lot. And so I think I learned quite a lot about business and how to structure a business from that. And then I came back to WPP, and I think getting close to clients, I remember I worked with Toby Hoare. I was probably more behind the scenes. Toby was more sort of front of house, if you like, on this big HSBC pitch back, I think in 2004, which at the time was the biggest, pitch in the history of marketing, the first kind of inverted commas holding company pitch. And I think answered a lot of people's questions as to why WPP existed. Because big companies like HSBC could give us their marketing problem, we would help them all around the world. And I think that was, another important step in my career. And then, to be blunt, I wouldn't be doing this job if I hadn't gone to run Wunderman. And I do try and encourage people that come and work at the centre of WPP to get out and work in the businesses and work with clients, because that's really what you need to do to succeed.
Mark, you clearly referred to Malcolm Gladwell, fantastic book, and the 10,000 hours, something I truly believe in. In fact, just a few weeks ago, we had Seth Godin on the show, and it was quite interesting because we had quite an interesting debate between talent and skill, and actually him being quite strict about making a quite distinct difference between the two. And I really want to ask, where do you sit on the spectrum of, do you think you were naturally talented to be in this role, or where do you think you've been skillful in the ability to be able to achieve this?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't answer that question. I think that everybody is different, and that people bring different skills to their roles, and but that doesn't mean that one thing is necessarily better than the other. If I, on the sort of scale of 1 to 10 of being sort of over enthusiastic, I'm probably a 4. Someone else might be an 8, but they'll be, look, I think I don't know the answer to that. I think you've got to have enough talent. You can teach yourself the skill. I think hard work is unfortunately unavoidable. You get out of life what you put into it, don't you? And I think, cruising through or a sense of entitlement, never going to help.
Work ethic, you've mentioned it a few times.
Yeah.
100% subscribe to that. And I think it's one thing that I hope my kids have. For you, what do you think the genesis of that was? Where do you think that comes from, that work ethic?
I don't know. It's probably a big balance of aspiration and insecurity. We're the best people are a little bit insecure. If you're not a little bit insecure, things will go wrong. So I think it's probably both of those things. I did. If I think back, you're asking me questions about I did work hard for exams and things, although largely at the last minute. But look, I think it's both, isn't it? Really, a desire to succeed and a fear of failure, and you probably, to some extent, need to have both of those.
Yeah, just to follow up comment on that before we hand back to you, Richie. I heard that everybody has imposter syndrome. Perhaps apart from sociopaths and narcissists, they're off the hook, but everyone else does have imposter syndrome, and I think it's right. It's part of what drives you. Absolutely, great answer. Back to you, Richie.
Oh, thanks. No, look, I want to move on and ask, and maybe cast your mind to around 3 years ago when you took over. Now, you clearly took over from, I think it was the longest standing CEO of a public listed company ever, right? I think that was Sir Martin Sorrell's one of the big major points. How did that feel? How were you? What were some of the things maybe going through your mind at that moment in time, as you were changing or handing over the baton?
I don't know. I mean, I'd say there wasn't really time to think very much. I haven't written, sadly, although I think my father told me to do, I didn't write a diary or take great notes. So I think things were happening too fast to give it any great thought. Look, it was a challenging time, as you can imagine, for a number of reasons, not least, 2 weeks later, Ford, which is our largest client, put our business up for review. Now, we were successful in maintaining, much of the relationship, and actually today the relationship's fantastic. But, you have a people crisis, you're in the news, you're obviously filling big shoes. There are people that think that, a CEO coming into, there are two sort of schools of camp. Only an insider could run WPP because they know how it works, or there is another school of camp that only an outsider could run it and bring a sort of sense of a new sense of energy and, a break from the past. I don't know. We will never know which one would have been better or worse. So just tried to do the right thing by our people. And I was, lucky in the sense that I knew, having worked at the center of the company for so long, I wouldn't say I didn't know that many of the clients, but I did know most of the people and the leaders of our businesses. So, together with Andrew Scott, who was a great help, I think we managed to get our arms around the key people and the key clients and provide, a point of stability and, work our way through it, really.
You mentioned the forward pitch early doors a couple of years ago as maybe a low or a tricky point, and then you had the high of HSBC. So I suppose my question is, do you love pitches, hate pitches, love and hate pitches all at the same time? I mean, because the company be pitching all the time. So tell us about pitching.
Well, I love pitches and going to pitches because I see where what we do as a company meets the client. And so I can see, I was in one, I've been in two this week. I can see how what we do meets what clients want. And it gives me a great sense of our people and what questions clients ask and how we're doing. So I really do like going it. I hate that phone call at the end when the client, you're trying to figure out what the client's going to tell you. Well, I've got good news or bad news. And you always kind of know. I hate losing pitches, I have to say. It's sort of really soul destroying. Actually, the worst bit is the period when you don't know. Once you know the answer, you just get on with life. It's the sort of uncertainty between, the pitch and finding out. And, and our people put tremendous amount of effort to pitches. I know clients, I'm sure there's some clients, I know clients know that, but these things really matter to our people, not least because for many people, it's the difference between having a job and losing a job. But they really do matter. So I think pitches are, one of the most important things in our business. And I know some people say they shouldn't pitch or don't want to pitch. I think that's nonsense. I think we have to do it, and it's good. It keeps us competitive, and it keeps the agency competitive. I think what you have to do running a business, though, is you can't focus on every micro decision because there's just too many ups and downs in your life. You have to look at how the business is doing and how the business is not doing. And if I think about WPP, despite the challenges of COVID, we just had our best quarter since 2016. It's the first time since 2013 we've led our industry, of our sort of six major peers. It's one quarter, but still, it's the first time in 8 years. And you have to look at those types of statistics, and there'll be ups and downs along the way. Good people will leave, good people will join. You'll win pitches, you'll lose pitches. You have to sort of somehow not let that emotion sort of overwhelm you.
Mark, through that answer, I think something really super insightful that I've kind of taken from that is the fact that actually it's pitching is the high. The answer is potentially a low or an extreme high, depending on how that goes. But actually, it's the bit in the middle that potentially really counts. And it's the uncertainty that people are constantly trying to avoid. I think that's super interesting because potentially as leaders or as people working in businesses, maybe that's the key, is how do we genuinely unlock and help people to remove that uncertainty in that situation. And to that end, I would like to just kind of maybe go to a slightly more macro question here. Now, clearly, uncertain environment gone through over the last 15 months. What do you think are some of the key things that people should be focusing on, or key trends that you are seeing in the market that just would maybe help to remove some of those uncertainties for people watching?
Well, from a business perspective,
yeah.
Well, I mean, the obvious ones are, the digitization of society, the growth in e-commerce, the explosion of digital media, the creator economy, trying to figure out what's going to happen to the data. What's the future of the data question? Is it more data, or is it actually doing marketing with less data? I suspect in some ways it's going to be actually more the latter than the former. I don't know if you've seen the new Apple privacy ad. It's very powerful. Now, very clever. it may be, self-serving to Apple, or may serve their interests. But I think it does sum up what a lot of people feel about how data is tracked on the internet and how their data is used. So I think that's where I would focus my efforts. I am focusing my efforts.
You just to build on that, so world of data and then some counter wins. You in recruiting Rob Riley, you said that creativity is the only way to create lasting value, and I think you've also said that the moldy Whopper took time to get there. So creativity and space is almost the contradiction of this pursuit of data. So how do you, as CEO, create the balance to allow creativity and space in and around an increasing obsession with data?
I don't think creativity and data are in conflict. I think that you need data to get great insights, right? So that's one use of data. You need data to get messages to the right people at the right time. And you need data to measure the effectiveness of the work that you're doing. So I think you need to be clear what data can and can't help you do. But what creativity can do, and actually I'm talking to Rory about this later at Nudgestock, is bring you to a different solution to a problem from the one that you'd first imagined. And so the example I use is the High Line in New York. If you went to management consultant and said to them, we've got this area of Lower Manhattan, the meatpacking district, the meat packers are moving out, we need to rejuvenate it, reindustrialize it. They come back and tell you that you need, tax breaks and rent holidays, and maybe we'll build a new road there. What a creative person will say, well, there's this sort of railway, disused railway. Why don't we turn that into a garden in the sky and attract, millions of tourists and millions of visitors and make it a place where people want to build apartments. And then you get Hudson Yard built, a $30 billion development, all basically because of, a 3-mile stretch of railway that someone converted into a garden. And I think that sort of creative solution to a problem is what our industry does best. And that's really creativity. And Rory wrote a piece saying, creativity has been sort of reduced to sort of colouring in all the pictures. I think that's right. It's not. It's about different solutions to a problem. One of our clients said, is an insurance company based in the Philippines, said they wanted to increase consideration for their insurance products amongst people in the Philippines. We recommended they sponsor Liverpool Football Club. I can assure you, if they went to a firm of management consultants, that would not have been the recommendation. They would have recommended that they increase their marketing spend, or they opened branches. It would not have been sponsorship of a football club 8,000 miles away. And I think those are the things that we do best in our industry. And you don't get there by studying the data. Yeah, the data can help you understand what happened after the event, but it's not a process of rigorous analysis that gets you there.
Mark, as part of that, though, I think that a lot of people revert to data because it's safe, because it's a feeling of security, going back maybe to the insecurity element of it. And I suspect your major role at WPP and the colleagues you work with is to actually help clients to move them along and to move to a more brave environment. And I would just love to get your thoughts on how do you do that when you potentially got a conservative insurance company who...
Well, one is we have to have the best people. And look, and I don't want to deny that. I don't want to be in the data denial. Data is obviously critical, right? Have to understand it. We have to use it. I don't want to be, but we have to use it for the right things. And a lot of what we do in our business revolves on judgment. And a good example is programmatic media. We spend thousands of hours optimizing programmatic media to drive a 10 or 15 or 20% improvement. But often we spend much less time figuring out what the creative is that goes on that programmatic media. Talked to a lot of media agencies. They get 5 banner ads to optimize. So they've got 5 pieces of creative work and 55 million media optimizations. The balance, to me, the balance is wrong. Now, we can't have one piece of creative work for every individual, although perhaps if you can tailor things, you can get close to something along those lines. So I think that what we do in our industry best is say, in our experience, based on our experience, you should do this. You should call your company this. You should have a meerkat advertise, a price comparison, a financial services price comparison website. This is what you should believe in, and that's, that's a different thing from data. Data will never get you to that conclusion. I'm sorry, but it won't. That's just a fact.
Yeah, it's actually a comment, Simon Morris, 100% agree, creative optimization is as important as media optimization. I've got a question from Keith Yonish. I don't know if you know Keith from days of old, but anyway, when Mark eventually decides to retire, does he think he'll be replaced by an AI functioning robot?
So someone sending out email, perhaps anything is possible. I don't know. I think that leading a company is a balance of art and science that's unlikely that AI, fortunately, will ever get to.
Phew, for many of us. But Mark, I wanna turn a little bit to new ways of working. The world as we move forward, going to be a strange and wonderful way of trying to get a balance back between office, home, and I guess the term is everywhere or anywhere. Love to get your thoughts. What do you think? Where do you see it?
Well, I think that everything useful that has been said on this subject has already been said, and there's very little I can add to it. I would say my observation would be that I think that some of the bankers who are insisting that people come back to work are probably certainly tonally wrong. I think it's proving much harder to get people back in the office than one would have expected or that people said. It is I just encourage people at WPP to come back in the office, not 5 days a week, but sometime, because it does remind you why we're in this business, why we go to work. Is because of the people we know and our friends and colleagues, and it's great to be back in an office. And actually, you may find that you were more productive at home than you are being back in the office, but actually there's some other benefits to being in the office and going in later after this. So look, I think it will be a balance at WPP. My guess is people will work, 3 or 4 days a week in the office, 1 or 2 days a week from home in the main. Hopefully that won't just be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll get save any money on real estate, and people will have a new flexibility they didn't have before. And we're going to have to do it for even if I wanted to get everyone back in the office 5 days a week, which I don't. Competitively, I won't be able to, because our best people will have options, right? That's the good thing. So we are going to have to figure it out.
In that context, Mark, I want to talk briefly about introversion and extroversion. We were very lucky to have Rachel Botsman on the show a little while back.
Yeah.
She did an interesting flip, which was to say she's a massive introvert, but she's grown to love presenting on stage because she's alone, it's quiet, she's in control, she doesn't get interrupted. And it was a real flip in my mind about, I'd assumed that, it's presenting with an extrovert's thing. So in that context, is it true that introverts have had a time to shine? Do you believe that you've seen some of your introvert employees having more impact? And I'm thinking, I talk to Sue Wunderman quite regularly, and she will say, I'm an introvert, and I've actually enjoyed some of the dynamic around home working. Have you observed introverts having more impact?
I don't know that I can say that. Actually, Satnam wrote in the Times something about introverts and extroverts today, in today's paper on this topic, saying that, extroverts, everyone thought that extroverts wanted to get back in the office, but now they're like, oh no, I quite like working from home. And I don't want to go to all those parties. So look, I don't know. I think that it's going to take some time to figure out what people are prepared to do. Will all these conferences still exist? Will Davos exist in the same way? Will Cannes exist in the same way? Will CES exist in the same way? I think the answer is probably not. And for introverts and extroverts, look, I think a lot of the best presenters and actors have been the most nervous, and somehow being on the stage brings something out different in them, which is fantastic. We ran Stream, this unconference we do with Yossi Vardi, on that basis, because Yossi said we should give, people coming up in our organization the chance to sort of shine on stage. Everyone has something inside them that they can do that's amazing and that we should recognize. And so, we have, as part of it, sort of an extravaganza, almost a talent show one night, so that everyone can get on stage and do something. So I think that we need to find the inner extrovert in everybody if we can.
What's really interesting for me is a lot of the themes that you talk of is this blend of how you balance sort of potentially people perceive things like you talked about introversion, you talked about nervousness, you talk a bit about insecurity and uncertainty and things like that. Aspiration and insecurity is what you mentioned. I just love the way that you're turning it on its head and actually turning a lot into that positive and making it that sort of positive thing that people all feel these sort of kind of symptoms, and yet actually you can harness them in such a great way to really kind of move on and push the boundaries. Mark, I'd just love to ask, what do you think, what would you like your legacy to be?
When I was recruiting Rob Riley as our Global Chief Creative Officer, Rob and I were sort of discussing the aspirations for WPP. And, I said, in part to motivate him to join us and in part because I believe it, I wanted WPP to be, the most creative company on earth. And I think that's what I would like our legacy to be. And now I've put it out there, we're going to have to figure out how we can achieve it. It always frustrates me that when Fast Company do their 50 most innovative companies, for some reason, WPP or WPP agencies are rarely on the list, yet much of the work that we do powers the companies who are on the list, from the work that AKQA do with H&M, or Wunderman Thompson has just done for Unilever's deodorant for people with disabilities, to, work, Gray's, creative work, with P&G around, race and other topics. So I think we do fantastic creative work, and I would love us to be more recognized. Now, with a $60 billion media budget, we've got a lot of, media muscle behind the ideas that we come up with as a company. And so that would be my aspiration for WPP. Obviously, it's a big stretch, but I would love us to be seen out there, alongside a Disney or an LVMH as, one of the more, most respected, well-run creative organizations, somewhere where, creative people really want to come and work. And I use that term creativity very broadly. I'd love WPP to have people that understand creativity in fashion and music and entertainment and sport, because all of these worlds are colliding, certainly colliding for our clients. And so I think that's where we want to take the organization. And if I could leave with that legacy, it's a big stretch, but if we could do that, I think we would attract the type of people that want to do it and the types of clients that want to work with people with that ambition.
That would be an amazing legacy. I've no doubt that you'll achieve that. Now, you did talk a little bit. So this last question, unfortunately, the time slipped by. Towards that, you mentioned about getting the right people. So I just did want to give you the canvas to talk a little bit about diversity and inclusion, because that's going to be critical to getting the right talent. And we had the All-In survey yesterday, and there's reasons to be optimistic and pessimistic about that. With the advent of the pandemic and Black Lives Matter, there's been more oxygen into the conversation. So my sense is that there's been a shift. But what's your perspective, and what are WPP doing around D&I?
No, I think, look, definitely there's been a massive shift in the last year. And we have a session on Monday, with a year's reflection on the first safe room we did following George Floyd's murder. I think, like most companies, we had probably focused on gender diversity a lot and given insufficient attention to racial diversity. And I think George Floyd's murder was, brought with it a realization that we need to do a lot more on race. And I remember sending a note out to WPP following it. And I didn't just get responses from the USA, I got responses from the UK and Singapore and Germany and all over the world that racism is pervasive in parts of society and holds people back. So that was something that we're really committed to taking action on. And I feel both proud of what we've done in the last year, but also recognizing that we have more to do. We have published our data, so we're now totally transparent, certainly for the US and the UK, and we will do that for the markets where we're able to publish our data. It's not legally possible everywhere, so we're transparent about our data. We put targets into people's leadership, into our leaders' incentive plans to reward them for that. We started to recruit people from different places. We have a much greater emphasis on training, particularly our Black talent in the US and the UK, to help them progress inside the organization. We've changed the way we promote people and changed the way we recruit people to make sure that we're bringing diverse candidates through the system. And we've promoted, a number of and recruited a number of senior staff, particularly Black staff in the US and the UK. We have Tom Malube join our board. At the time we didn't have a Black member of our board of directors, and we got on it, and within 3 months or less we appointed Tom. And I think all you can do is take action, listen, not be defensive, be transparent, put things out there and take action. We laid out a 3-year plan. We're 1 year into that 3-year plan. I feel like we've made progress. There's a lot more that we can do. And I think that it's good for our people and it's good for business. And it's certainly very important to our clients. And I think a more diverse workforce that represents, our work, if our work doesn't represent society, as it's not going to work. And, so we have to represent societies at all levels of the company, and that's our ambition.
Couldn't agree more with that, Mark. Mark, we're unfortunately out of time, which just absolutely flies by. So just in under a minute, I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the key themes that I've taken away from this talk this morning, and then pass over to Mark for some of his reflections. But the first thing that I would genuinely say is that I get such a sense of warmth from you, Mark. It's just, a real kind of sense of mix between sort of, I think you did do a decent job of chest beating, but in such a lovely, genuine way. That actually, that there is such a sense of passion and accomplishment, and yet the journey is so long that you need to go on. But it just feels so nice that, just such a genuine, authentic sort of way, that manner that you have about you. Just want to first put that out there. And then some of my key things were, first of all, you talked about the 10,000 hours, and it's without, it very much feels like, that's encapsulated a lot of the things that you've thought and you've done. Hard work is absolutely at the core of this. And you said a sense of entitlement is just not going to work. And I really do love that. So you kind of put away some of that stuff and actually get down to it, the nitty gritty of hard work. And that really is at the core. Your balance of aspiration and insecurity, love that sort of those two key words there. And I think all of us should need to kind of play into both those. You don't have a diary. Maybe you should start one. We shall see. Uncertainty being one of those key themes around being quite soul destroying in many respects. We refer to things like data, less data, more data, data having its place, but then also being able to kind of reflect and then actually move the needle using creativity, which I thought was brilliant. And you actually use the term art and science. I thought that was great. Channel your nervousness was one of the other kind of key phrases that you've used. And finally, you want to be the most creative organization on earth. So there you go. It was an absolute pleasure, Mark. Genuinely was really good to speak to you. I'm going to hand over to the other Mark for some of his reflections at the close.
Thanks, Richie. You did a brilliant job actually of summarising the key points. It's been brilliant to have you on, Mark, just to get your insights and experience and perspective. I'm just going to reinforce a couple of things. A number of times you talk to the balance of things, art and science, data and creativity, talent and skills. I think that's probably a key attribute of a CEO of such a big company, to see the balance of things. Work ethic shines through, that strength of work ethic, which I can relate to, and I think we all need. It's no escaping it. But my biggest observation is not something you said specifically, but what comes through in droves is a sense of honesty. You are the antithesis of a bullshitter. And
I'm so good you don't realise.
Well, or you're a brilliant actor, but I suspect I'm right in my assessment. I'm going to convince myself I'm right in my assessment anyway. But no, it's been really refreshing to, more decency and honesty and straightforwardness than hubris. So I've really respected and liked that. So thank you again, Mark. It's been brilliant to have you on the show, and I can't thank you enough on behalf of myself and Richie and all our guests.
Brilliant. Well, thanks both of you. Thanks for your questions. I wasn't quite sure what to expect, so I think I'll reflect on this. Our PR people will tell me what I should think about it. But thank you both, and thanks everyone for listening or watching, and thanks to our people out there for everything you're doing, and our clients for all of their support as well.
Yeah, brilliant, lovely. I'm just going to do a final note for everybody for next week, Friday, 8 a.m. We've got David Smith on, unbelievably brilliant person. He's a Paralympian. He was a top flight athlete. He had a tumor in his neck, had to learn to walk again, had another tumor in his neck, had to learn to walk again, achieved Paralympic gold status, and a really interesting flip on well-being and mental health. So I think you're going to really enjoy that one. Until then, thank you again, Mark. Everyone have a great weekend, and thanks for tuning in.